Coach, who would you say so far this point in spring are the top 2 or 3 candidates to be your kick returner and punt returner
Sure.
this season?
Yeah, Malik Shiraz definitely jumped out. You see him; he's both a kick and punt returner. Saw him doing that time at Fresno State. He certainly showed it out here. Dylan Riley is an elite kick returner. He's got to hold on to the football more. When he does that, his average would have put him, if he was in the amount of actual countable, would have put him in the top 2 or 3 in the NCAA. So we've got to make sure Dylan's holding on to the football right there and doing those things right. And I think Cam Bates has shown. Third guy who does a nice job in the punt return game also is Caden Chan, local guy who did it at the JC level. So those would be the group right now that I think have stood out.
We've heard a lot about Malik as a running back. What makes him special as a returner?
Yeah, he's got great lateral movement and the ability to hit the burst, so he's got a little bit of both those, which adds to him. He can do a both punt and kick return. There's a lot of guys that can do one or the other, but Malik's got the ability to do both.
Is that one of the big, I know running back depth obviously is important, but was his ability in the return game one of the biggest reasons you guys won them?
He was huge. That was a huge part of it, certainly for me too, on that end. But he brings that versatility as a running back and certainly from the return game.
Who would you say overall so far this spring, Coach, has been your best special teams player?
Yeah, I think, Buck's been one that stands out in everything that he does over and over, which is not a surprise. He does the same thing at safety. But 2 guys that have consistently put in good work are Dylan Riley and Cam Bates on the offensive side. Bowen Phelps, Clay Martineau, you're seeing that a lot on the defensive side. Cole Miller's flashed amount. So there's been good competition. We spent a little bit more time in the spring on fundamentals and techniques. Get a little bit of scheme. We did a little bit of scheme in the scrimmage, but I would say in those realms. Jake Ripp is another guy that is consistent with what you're seeing from a special team standpoint.
How many guys do you run through and try at this time of the year?
Everybody. We're going to get everybody reps at this time. Like I said, a lot of fundamental technique drills, just seeing who can pick up those drills. And then we'll put them into small group environments right there. How do they compete? How can they transition those skills? And then we'll get a handful of times where we actually open it up. Had 2 live. I say live, we tagged on from the returners, kickoff, kick returns. On Saturday, had a handful of those from punt return.
Life without Jonah Domus?
Yeah, so it's been different. It's been a while. He's been here for a minute. So got 2 guys working it hard right now with Jarrett Reeser and Evan Keeley. Roland's has some leg injury stuff, so he's been limited as we're going through spring. Jarrett had a really good day on Saturday from a field goal standpoint and solid from kickoff. So hopefully we get healthy as we finish up these last few weeks, but the competition's been good.
I know he won't be in here until summer, but Colton Boomer, what do you like about him?
Yeah, Colton's a guy who's done it on the blue. I think that starts right there. The game-winning field goal on the blue. He's a mature guy who's played a lot of football, and he can be a kickoff and field goal guy also.
Is that a nervous feeling, or what's it like at a position like kicker when you've had this steady known commodity for so many years to not know what you have?
Yeah, certainly. That's college football. Done in enough places where that's part of it. Guys are gonna leave and turn over. It's nice when you had a guy like Jonah for a long time, but that's the world we live in. So excited to see how these guys compete and step up in game day situations.
How disappointing, or what was your thought process when you found out Andrew was transferring?
Yeah, it's always tough. I appreciate everything Andrew did for this program. It's a climate of college football right now, but it's always tough when you lose guys. You don't want to lose players.
How do you make up for his loss?
It's a lot like an injury in a lot of ways. It's the next man up. Jake Ripp's moved in there the last week, played some linebacker for us. I think, again, both Clay and Bowen have done a really nice job stepping up, so it'll be a chance to continue to see how those guys progress the last couple of weeks here of spring.
The defensive style, last year you guys only had one of those 2 really out there with him and Marco most of the time, because he played so much dime. Was the plan to maybe try to get both them out there together more? Now do you go back to maybe just with Marco more of that kind of scheme, or how do you kind of look at how his loss changes things defensively?
Yeah, so I think you got to look at overall who are your top 13 to 15, and I think in spring you're really trying to identify that. How is this thing blows up? How do we get our top 13 to 15 on the field? The nice thing with what we have structurally defensively, have the ability to move some parts around. So that's part of the process we're going through right now, is defining those guys and how those schemes will fit our personnel the best, because it's a player's game. Players make plays.
Jake Ripp, back to linebacker edge wherever he is right now, like his role possibly, now with the Simpson departure, is he right there in the mix or going to play next to Marco, you would see?
Yeah, I could see him being in the mix. I think whether Jake's at edge or Jake's at linebacker, Jake's going to be in the mix and he's going to play football. And, similar, last year when we were playing a little bit more dime package with it, I looked at both Marco and Drew as starters. Jake Ripp, whether he's playing in the linebacker room at the end of this thing or he's playing in the edge room, is going to play a lot of football for us.
How
Can
well does-
somebody play both during the season, or is that hard?
Yeah, I think it's hard, but I think now that Jake's been through it before, I think he's a little bit more veteran on that. I think at times last year was hard for him when you're bouncing the guy around. I think he's got those reps doing both now, so I think he's in a better spot to do that. But at the end of this thing, we'll get it figured out. We'll get it sorted out. And like I said, find our best 13, 14, 15. How do we get those guys on the field? A lot of that time is packaging them up. Your third down packages may change. How you're structuring Jake in there with some of the different fronts we can run, you'll change those. Whether he's playing edge or whether he's playing linebacker.
How well does he just roll with whatever changes you need? To
That's
have
just
him
how
do?
he's wired, man.
I know, like a couple weeks ago, he was
Yeah.
telling us he's really excited to, rush the passer every play, and now he's, back in this linebacker position.
That's just who Jake is. He's going to do whatever you ask him to do, and he does it at a high level. Credit to him.
Obviously, been coaching a long time. What do you make of just the current climate where the transfer portal doesn't even open for 2 more weeks, and you've got 2 starters who are now in there already because of we all can draw conclusions to that. I mean,
Sure.
just what do you make as a guy that's been around this game a long time and where things are at?
Well, it's changed a lot. I think this is my 27th year doing it, and it's changed a lot, but you got to stay on top of where it has. It's no different than, my background was in education, was going to be a teacher, going into it. It changes, and you got to change with the times. You can like it, not like it. Quite frankly, it doesn't really matter what I think. It's a matter of how can we adjust and adapt to the culture and environment we're in. I think it all started for us in COVID a few years ago, right? You want to talk about the last 5 years of college football, it's been absolutely crazy. The one thing you learn is how do I find a way to try to stay ahead of the curve? How do we try to adapt? How do we try to overcome to put the best product on the field?
What do you see from JFR this spring?
Yeah, so JFR, we've been working on a handful of different things. Working on, for him, distance has never been an issue. Working on trying to get some more hang on some stuff. He does a great job in situational punting. I think he was 5 for 5 the other day in our sky punt, pin punt drill. So we're going to continue to work off of that.
I know he had a lot of hype coming in last year, and I don't want to say it was a disappointing season, but the numbers were definitely down a little bit. Is he kind of itching to get back to where he was 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think special teams numbers, they're certainly they're a stat that you can look at, but I think there's a lot more behind it. You can punt for a lot of yards, but if you don't have the hang to go with it, sometimes that changes things. Also, you can punt for less yards and more. Direction, angle of the punt, where we're putting it, all those things are a factor into it. So certainly we want him. The biggest thing we need to do is improve our net punt. When you give up a big return, that's going to be a problem. So you got to eliminate the big returns and make sure our net punt, which is the stat that matters most to this football team, is where we need it to be.
It's pretty noticeable when you go out there practice and you don't see a Tubner or a Ahmed Hassani and just some of these staples, Michael Callahan defensively. I mean, who are the guys that are kind of stepping up and filling that leadership void on the defense right now?
Yeah, so you certainly Marco in our room's done. He's been here for a long time. Buck from the safety room's doing it. You've got a couple older corners in there that you see. That's JV at the edge position is doing it. So again, you're in that mold where you've had some guys who played a lot of football here, and a lot of them in a leadership role is growing that next tier of guys. And I think we're making good strides with that.
You said like if you could find a kid that can kick the ball out of the end zone 95% of the time, I mean, you're going to just scully that kid up.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still the philosophy of what you want to do on kickoffs, and where are you guys there to get that touchback percentage where you want it this year?
100%. That's why we scholarship. We've got a couple guys coming in, a couple guys to compete, some guys that were here. But absolutely, that's a goal. We want to kick that thing out of the back of the end zone every dang time we can. And I think we got a good group of guys coming in. Got to get healthy with Roland to see exactly what he can do. But looking forward to the guys that are working here. Had like I said, good game on Saturday, and then looking forward for Boomer to get out here too and see how that fits into the big picture.
We talked to you after before the bowl game or something, just kind of about last season and big picture. But I mean, when you guys kind of self-scouted and went back, I mean, what did stand out to you, I guess, in terms of the most disappointing or the areas that you really are focused on this year?
Well, it's, tackling and leverage in space. You talk about the two units, the kickoff and the punt units. Those you got to be able to put people down in space. And there's multiple factors that go into it. It starts with the kicker, the punt, the direction, the hang, and all of those phases. It's certainly you got to have the protection phase with it also when you're talking punt, but it's the coverage and finish phase. We've got to be better in that area. You cannot give up explosive plays in that part of the game. We want to be 90% when we're in our pin punt situations, putting the ball inside the 10. We were about 70. So you're talking some major field position areas that we need to clean up there. When you watch the return game, you look at the kick return game, there's some things out there that are really good. But then when you put the ball on the ground, I don't care what you're doing, that's a problem. We got to get that cleaned up. And we got to be more explosive in the punt return game. I think sometimes that's another stat at times too. You certainly want to have, but you got to catch everything. It starts with that. There's as much said of catching than letting the ball roll 20 yards, right? There's the hidden yardage. So you got to make sure you're catching everything, not going out. But we want to get that first down. I mean, we want to average getting that first down for our offense right there. So those are all areas, and we got to be higher field goal percentage. We want to be up in that 85% off of that. And we were not that last year. So all those areas are areas that we've looked to improve.
You guys giving special teams any more practice time this spring than in the past?
Yeah, we're working a little bit more time with it. So that's been a positive. It's a little bit more time. But to me, there's also, I think there's a maturity within this room for guys that have played, got here, and there's no substitute from playing football. I use guys like a Bowen Phelps and, Clay Martin. I use those names, but you can see them already playing better football now that they've been through here in the special teams phase.
Spencer Danielson, you said 27 years you worked for a lot of guys. Like, what's sticking out, Coach, about as Danielson continues to get his feet wet with this head coach? I mean, it's hard to believe this is only going into year 2
Sure.
full time. Like,
Mhm.
what sticks out?
Well, he number one, he's a natural leader, okay? And what you see is what you get. And sometimes in college football, that's not the case. But he's stuck with what he's going to do with these guys and hasn't changed. What I mean by that is sometimes guys, them, they get a head job, and you're like, man, this is a different person than I worked with when he was a DC. That's not him. He has true love for each of these players and this staff in here that filters through the program. And for him to hold to that, I think that's hard in a world where it's easy to change, it's easy to flop.
You've seen Frank Miley come in and what he's brought to the table here with the defensive line.
Yeah, me and Frank got a long history together. So what you're going to get from Frank is a first-class person, number one, an elite teacher, and just a great person to have in this program.
It sounds like maybe it hasn't happened a ton yet, but it'll hopefully allow maybe some periods where Eric can go with a DB drill or maybe move around, or maybe in a meeting he doesn't have to go in there as much. How do you think having the experience of a guy like Frank as an assistant D-line coach, so to speak, is going to help with Eric and his duties?
I think you're right on. It gives Jens a chance to float around a little bit, get his hand in each phase, linebackers, defensive backs, the front, and then the guys that know Frank know what kind of teacher and coach he is. So he's an unbelievable asset to have here.
Anything else?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Coach.